Micheal Yon, welcome back to the Centurion Show.
I never left. I've been waiting in the studio for days.
That's true. But a lot's been going on, as you know, in just the last few days since we talked last. So why don't you give us a sit rep on what's going on, especially in the Middle East, because I know things are getting pretty hot over there.
They are. As you can see with Iran and Israel, the first, truth is the first thing that goes out the window in war. Well, it's been gone out the window for a long time. So we don't really know what's going on other than they're swapping missiles back and forth and they're shooting at each other. Turkey obviously has just threatened to enter the war and to shoot down Israeli aircraft that violate Turkish airspace. And it's clear that others are going to the battlefront. We have aircraft carriers on the way to the region. At least 2 ships crashed together in the Strait of Hormuz, causing a fire, which is interesting. Strait of Hormuz is still open, which is a vital waterway which will affect pretty much all the developed life on Earth if it gets closed. It doesn't mean everybody's going to die, but you will have a change of lifestyle. A lot of people will if it's closed for any considerable amount of time. And anyway, at the end of the day, it's doing what we all know wars do. It's growing. It's clearly growing. So predictable. It is out of control. Again, we've got people like Turkey now entering it. They may, I know that some other allied forces are moving closer in, not just the United States. And as most people probably are aware, Iran has a close relationship with Russia and China. And so, and Pakistan is, also saying that they will join battle. Meanwhile, I think it's quite clear based on the mood that we see in Europe, for instance, huge protests in Netherlands a couple of days ago, massive, over 100,000 people. Often when you hear estimates of protests, the numbers are clearly off, but when you look at the video of the numbers of people that are Save Palestine type protests, it was a good 100,000. It was massive. Some estimates were 150,000. I don't know, but it was some, let's put it like this, it wasn't 10,000. It was a huge number. And you see that sort of energy is gathering in many places. Now, keeping in mind, often as a war starts, it'll take on a life of its own, as we've talked about before, and nobody suddenly is in control anymore. It's like a forest fire that you just don't, there's a huge amount of, let's say, you imagine there's been a drought for 5 years, and some state like California hasn't allowed people to pull off the dead wood, and they haven't allowed natural burns to go through. Now you've got this huge fuel out there, and it's quite dry, right? That's conditions. That's a lot of fuel. It's dry. The winds are blowing, and it's hot. That's the way it is now with this war. Big fuel load, very dry, winds are blowing, and it's sparked. The fire's clearly going. So at that point, it gets to the point where you can try everything you want to put it out. But right now, what we're seeing is people trying to make it go bigger. We see, for instance, United States and Israel fanning the flames. And Iran obviously is lobbing missiles back at Israel successfully. Turkey is saying that they're going to get involved, or at least threatening to get involved. China is clearly already involved. Russia is clearly already involved. So what you'll see over time, though, is as people sense weakness from the United States and Israel, which is quite clear, actually, they will come to the battle. A lot of people will join battle especially when they start to see it's going one way or the other. They'll shift to that side of the boat, right? And I think that's what we're going to see. We saw this in Iraq. We saw it in Afghanistan. We've seen it in many wars where people just start coming from all over the world to join battle. Now, it takes them a long time to do it, so it's not like that's not going to happen overnight, right? That takes months or even years, at least months before they really start to gather. And one of the problems that Israel has actually is internally it's very fractured. And there's about 9 million Israelis, and about 2 million are actually Arabs. A lot of people don't realize that. They seem to think that it's all Jewish people and they all love and get along together, but that's not true. About 2 million are actually Arabs and Muslims, and then about 500,000 are from other places, other groups, and then many of the actual Jewish Israelis actually are from different groups that don't agree with the government at all and will not join the army, like some of the Orthodox will not join the army. They fight the Israeli police all the time, and that's Israeli Jews, right? But so it's very fractured. So it's not like, there's 9 million Israeli Jews. It's really some much smaller number, and it's a much smaller number still that actually are going to stand up for Israel, right? And so you see the Minister of Transportation just a couple days ago, maybe it was yesterday, actually halted travel for Israeli Jews to even leave Israel, for most of them, right? So they're stuck in there. What are they going to do? And why are they halting that travel? Are they halting it? I think we could probably infer why she's doing that. Probably because she realizes they could have an uprising internally with the Arabs or other Jewish people, actually, and they're going to need all hands on deck to defend even internally, much less externally. And as these different fights take place, imagine you've got one bucket of paint to paint a barn, a giant barn. You just don't have enough paint, right? It's the same way with war. And one of the basic precepts of guerrilla warfare is to just strike in places where the army's not. Just don't tend to strike the army. And when you strike the army, you hit small outposts. You just nibble away at them. You destroy them in detail is what it's called, right? You just little chips and pieces here and there, and you just slowly attrite them. They can't guard everything, just like the United States. Even with our military and our abilities, we just can't guard everything. And so obviously the enemies know that. We're talking about an area where a lot of people have a great deal of combat experience. A lot of people have intergenerational combat experience. Since they were young, 12 years old, they were serving as lookouts, or even 10 years old, right? They were, even as young guys that are 13, 14, 15 years old, they've already got rifles. They're already fighting, right? They're as good at combat as some people are at soccer, right? They do that. They're very good at it. And so there's a deep well of that, right? And it's quite serious, because we see that the Iron Dome clearly is not so iron after all. It looks like a sponge recently, and the shots are hitting, right? And now we see people saying, well, the rocket strikes have decreased because Israel is destroying their rocket launchers. May or may not be true. We don't know. They only lie. But remember, this is the first part of the war. And one of the things that you'll see in wars is they go like this all the time, right? So you don't look at these like the stock market. You're looking at, is it going like this or going like this? It's clearly going like this, right? And keep in mind, this is a war that didn't just start. It's been going on for millennia, right? So it's baked in the cake over there. It's anthropologically baked into that cake. But we have global players now with global power like China, Russia, United States, who are all showing up to the party. That's World War III type stuff right there, right? And so Iran is important to a lot of people. Strait of Hormuz is very important to China. It's very important to Japan. Very important to a lot of people, Europe, all of Europe, because that is where a huge amount of energy flows through there, right? So if the Strait of Hormuz is closed, who knows who would close it? I mean, people would instantly blame it on Iran, but Iran has no reason to close it. They have no reason. It'd be like when Nord Stream was destroyed. Many people asked me who I thought destroyed Nord Stream. They were blaming the Russians, which would be like blaming the Russians for slitting their own throat, actually, right? I mean, because that was a pipeline between Russia and Germany. Why would Russia destroy Nord Stream? But a lot of people actually bought that. Russia could just go like this with mouse clicks and turn it off. Russia didn't need to destroy Nord Stream. They helped pay for and install it. It's their pipeline that they sell natural gas to Germany with. So, but still, a lot of people are quite confused and still blame that on Russia, which is absolutely just very, anyway. So, but, my response to who destroyed Nord Stream was, it was either the United States or it was space aliens, right? It was one of those. I mean, the United States threatened to destroy it before we did it, right? Multiple times, openly threatened to destroy it, including Trump, right? Biden and Trump both threatened to destroy Nord Stream. And anyway, then it was gone, and we blamed Russia. And people bought it, you know. Likewise with Strait of Hormuz. Why would Iran actually close the Strait of Hormuz? I mean, they may. They may close it to our Navy. There's those sorts of reasons. You know, once our aircraft carriers and whatnot are, you know, ships are in there, they could shut off, resupply, that sort of thing. They could affect the well-being of all the Gulf states, obviously, right? So who knows? My guess on who would close the Strait of Hormuz would actually be, this may sound strange, but Israelis or Americans, right? And then blame it on Iran, because that's just the way these things go. Like October 7th was clearly a sponsored attack, clearly sponsored by Israel, like so obvious it's embarrassing to have to actually explain it. Like Nord Stream, it's kind of embarrassing. It's like at some point, if they don't realize who actually cut Nord Stream, you think you're wasting your time even talking, right? And October 7th is the same way. It was obviously Israel that set it up and did it. They allowed Hamas to do a lot of the killing, and Israel also killed some of their own people. That's very obvious. Israelis are saying that 24/7. A lot of Israelis are incredibly angry. They're never going to join the army after they've seen these sorts of things. A lot of Israelis that were there were saying our people were shooting us with helicopters. Our people were shooting us with tanks. They're saying it. They're not. So this isn't just wild theory from somewhere else. That's those guys who are there that are saying it, right? But there's the casus belli, and you still hear people saying that, well, for October 7th we need to go get Iran. Well, you blamed it before on Hamas. And then they say, well, yeah, Iran supports Hamas. Well, who else supports Hamas? That would be Israel. Very openly. Like Netanyahu has said in the clearest terms, basically almost said, we support Hamas because we have to. That's not verbatim, but he was saying things like that through the years. I mean, Israel supported Hamas and the United States supported Hamas. But then when the attack happened, which was clearly sponsored by Israel, we blamed Hamas and Iran, right? And likewise, you see Netanyahu, since he was a young man, saying the same statements about other countries that he's saying today about Iran, that they're that close to getting a nuclear weapon. He used to say that about Iraq, right? And then we went to the war in Iraq. I spent 2 years in that war. We lost a lot of people. I have no idea how many Iraqis were killed, but it was a lot. It was huge, like, I don't know, 1 million or something. It was a lot. Between deaths from diseases and actual kinetic warfare, it was some massive number. And a lot of the others just left, and they're never going to go back. Like the Christians that were in Iraq, I was in some of their churches. People talked about how the Christians were treated badly in Iraq, but in fact, Saddam Hussein used the Christians for his cooks. He used the Christians for his closer help because he trusted the Christians more. Right?
Wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah. I was in their churches. Wow. You can look on things that I wrote. I was inside Christian churches in Iraq near Mosul and in Baghdad. I was in one church that got blown up, and they rebuilt it. I was there when they reopened it, right? I was in for a service, right? And the Iraqis would tell me all the time. I published this way back in, I don't know, 2007 maybe, 6, 7. That a lot of Iraqis would say, "Oh, you can talk to Americans. Please tell Americans to tell the Christians to come back, because they've gone to California. We want them back in Baghdad." And some of them would say, this will blow your mind. Some of them would say, because they have the liquor stores. The Christians ran the liquor stores, right? So some of them would straight up say that. Yeah, straight up. They would be like, because the Muslims were not allowed to sell liquor, right? So it's more twisted than you might expect. But there was one. I was in one of the Christian it was a sanctuary, but it had a big library. And I took photos of the books and stuff. It was beautiful. It was very well kept. They had a computer center and that sort of thing. But U.S. forces occupied it due to the war. I mean, they kept good care of it. They made sure that nobody messed with the books or messed with anything. They made sure that it was all kept pristine, so hopefully they would return. But the Iraqis were actually welcoming. I mean, they welcomed the Christians. Now, when Al-Qaeda came, they were killing more Muslims than Christians. Christians were an afterthought. Their main target was other Muslims, right? It was mostly Muslim on Muslim. That's another thing that people get confused about. I mean, but they would also go after Christians, but their main targets were other Muslims, which is normal in a lot of these wars, because nobody kills more Muslims than Muslims, right? And nobody kills more Christians than Christians, and nobody kills more Jews than Jews. I mean, straight up. One of the guys that invented the Haber-Bosch process, his name is Fritz Haber. He was a German, they always say German chemist, which he was. He discovered the ability to take the hydrogen off of natural gas and combine it with this nitrogen that we're breathing and make fertilizer, right? And so that became the Haber-Bosch process. He also became the father of German chemical warfare, right? Like Zyklon B, and he was Jewish. He was Jewish, and his chemicals killed huge numbers of Jews, right? So, I mean, things are, when you really look at details, and this isn't hidden. This isn't like conspiracy. No, it was all in the newspapers back then. You know, it was all very, very clear. And so what I'm getting to is, when we look at it from a distance, it looks one way. When you get up closer, it looks another way. This is not about Muslims versus Jews. This is about who controls. That's what it's about on one level, Muslims versus Jews and Christians. But on another level, it's about routes and resources. Because China doesn't care about Muslims and Jews. They don't care about Muslims and Jews and Christians. They care about routes and resources. China cares about, they want the world to be Han Chinese. They want the world to speak Mandarin, right? But they want it to be genetically Han Chinese, right? So there's different players that are in the game here. And at the end of the day, this is complex on many levels. I think it's already past the point of no return where you can't turn it off. It's got a life of its own. This war is born. But keep in mind, this is part of a larger war. Like the fighting that we're seeing between Iran and Israel now, which has other players involved, is the same war that you see in Panama. It's the same one that we see that invades our borders with millions of people, the same one that floods our streets and the streets of Thailand and many other streets with drugs. It's the same exact war that plays music that, you know, like, let's get drunk and high and have shootouts with the cops. It's that same war, right? It's the same information war. It's the same kinetic war. It's the same drug war. It's quite amazing the more that you learn about this.
Yeah, well, Michael, at the beginning, I noticed you said that truth is often the first casualty of war. And so I know you've witnessed a lot of war, collapse, and mass migration, or we should call it invasion, around the world. You've witnessed that firsthand. And so I'm curious how you, both spiritually and morally, process the weight of what you see and where truth is, like you said, often the first casualty of war.
At the end of the day, we're all in God's hands at the end of the day, right? So, I mean, we have some, obviously, we've got our own power that we should exercise as well as we can within the constraints of freedom that we actually have, which is quite a lot if you accept the responsibility of taking charge. And everybody here is young leaders, right? I mean, you are young leaders. And so it will be up to you to pick up and do a better job than everybody's done before you, which means a lot of study, a lot of going places. I mean, I'm not, when it comes to processing all these things, I don't need any psychological help or analysis or anything. I'm fine. We all have responsibility to be men, to take responsibility, to be strong, and not to be the shoulder. We're to be the shoulder, not the tears, right? We don't have time for that. We don't have time for crying. We don't have time. People depend on us. And therefore, when we get up in the morning, we wake up and start doing action, right? From the eyes open, time for work, right?
You said it was the same war in Israel and Iran, Panama, and our border. Who is funding these wars, and can you explain more on how it's the same war?
Yeah, there's no one group in particular that runs it. So like when I was down in the Darien Gap jungle with Brett Weinstein, he asked something like, well, I keep saying they, and he said, who are they? I'm like, actually, I don't know exactly who all the theys are. I know some of the theys are. Some of the theys are the Chinese Communist Party. Other theys are Zionists. But Zionists have many different species, right? It's not like there's many different components to these oligarchical systems. There's the Russians, but inside of their system, they have their own fractures and own coalitions and that sort of thing. So it's a big mosh pit, right? It's like it's a jungle, right? And so at the end of the day, some of the major current players. In the old days, a major player was Great Britain, was England, and then it became Great Britain, of course, when they took Scotland in and that sort of thing, and in Spain and France, those were the major players. In another era, it was like Genghis Khan and people like that, Alexander the Great. It was different oligarchical systems. So they're not. These systems aren't static. They're always morphing. Some are getting stronger, some are getting weaker. But some of the major players currently that we're looking at are the Chinese Communist Party, of course. The Russians, United States has many subcomponents, but let's say people that are Americans. A lot of the Americans, I think, are not actually Americans. They're just U.S. citizens. They get citizenship to use it, to get entree, to get access, to get to everything that they need, such as like a lot of the Israelis, if you say the dual citizenship, we should not have it, they'll say, oh, you're anti-Semite, whatever. Okay, I'm done with those people. We should not have dual citizenship, period, full stop. Because a lot of the people clearly have allegiance to someone other than the United States, and that is somebody other, possibly even than Israel. It could be to Zionist, which is different than Israel. Zionism and Israel are not the same thing. Zionism has different components that fight each other, and also they don't seem to have a country, right? And it's not Judaism. Zionism is another aspect. Many of the Zionists obviously are Christians. I think most of them probably are American Christians, is my guess. Nobody knows, but nobody knows. Every time I bring that up with actual Zionists, I'm like, what is the pie chart on Zionists here? You know what I mean? Nobody seems to know. But I think, and everybody tends to agree with that study these things, that there's probably more Christian Zionists than anybody else, right?
That's shocking.
Yeah.
But to a lot of people.
Yeah, but evangelicals, of which many of my friends and family have or were evangelical Christians, a lot of those are clear Zionists, right? And they'll say it openly, like, and defend what they think is. But when you really look at these things behind the curtain, a lot of it's just a facade. It's just kayfabe, right? A lot of Zionists are atheists, like Brett Weinstein that I took to the jungle. He's a Zionist, but he's atheist, right? Laura Loomer, I took her down there as well. She's Zionist, but she's Jewish, right? But she's conservative Jewish. But then there's left-wing Zionists, and then there's Zionists who are Muslims, right? A lot of Kurdish people that I was out with a lot are actually Zionists, but they're Muslims, Sunni, right? So, and they love Israel, and they're totally down. They're that close with Zionists, right? So, when the Zionists try to conflate Judaism with Zionism, what they're trying to do is put up a body armor. They're trying to say, oh, you can't talk bad about Zionists because that's anti-Semitic and anti-Jew and all this stuff. But in reality, that's just an information war. If you look at Netanyahu, his family name is actually Meliakovsky. They changed it. He's a European atheist, right? He's straight up, he's not even Jewish. He's whiter than I am. If you look at his photo next to mine, he's whiter than I am. And he's not Semite. He'll throw the anti-Semite. He's like, yeah, okay, what are you? You're the guy bombing Gaza. You're the guy bombing the Semites of Gaza, many of which are Christian. Some are actually Jews, and a lot are Muslims. That's anti-Semite, is actually bombing Gaza, right? And that's just reality. It's the naked truth. But they install these people everywhere. Basically, Netanyahu is Israel Trudeau. He's Israel Zelensky, right? They're just actors that Netanyahu grew up in the United States. He's got the perfect white face. He speaks English perfectly. He knows a great deal about American cultures and our ways. He's the perfect guy to suck the energy out of America into the Zionist coffers, right? And it works. I mean, I grew up being a great defender of Israel. I grew up being a great defender of all things Israel, right? And then as time went on, and I went to the wars, and it took a long time for me to. I was out with a huge amount of Zionists, and still am. I mean, I talk with Zionists pretty much daily, actually. And but some of the people who hate Zionists more than any Muslim is Orthodox Jews. I mean, Orthodox Jews are full jihad on Zionists. That's not a Jewish word, but you know what I'm saying. I mean, the Orthodox Jews, I mean, you get them riled up on Zionism, and they go crazy. I mean, if you have a civil war in Israel, it'll be Jews on Jews, probably, and also the Arab component. The Zionists want to draft, for instance, the Orthodox Jews into the Israeli Defense Forces. And the Orthodox are like, no, we don't want to go. They're like, not only will we not go, we'll physically oppose you, right? And you see all the time Orthodox Jews clashing with Israeli police and that sort of thing. And the Orthodox Jews are constantly saying Zionism is not Judaism. They're saying that constantly. They're constantly holding up signs because they're saying, you're calling for fire on us. We were just Orthodox Jews doing our thing, running the camera store or whatever, and selling books. A lot of old books I buy are from old Jewish people because they love books like I do, right? They like to study like crazy. We get along great on that, but the ones that I deal with are like, look at what they're doing. The Zionists are making everybody hate Jews, the real Jews, and a lot of them are not even Jewish. And a lot of them are atheists, straight up atheists. But as soon as you say something bad about Zionists, they're going to say, oh, you're anti. So what I'm getting to with this is there's a huge amount of this is just a cake of lies, and we have to be careful. The United States has our own interest, and we have a Panama Canal, which is extremely important to us, right? Suez Canal is extremely important to Europe. It's important to us, but it's not anywhere near as important as the Panama Canal. The Strait of Hormuz is important to us, but it's not anywhere as important to us as the Panama Canal, right? It's not anywhere as important to us as Bahamas and Antigua and what's going on in Cuba and Haiti. Basically our backyard. And the Monroe Doctrine is gone. The Monroe Doctrine has been gone for at least a century, right? It is absolutely gone. We need it. We actually need to enforce it. A lot of people don't realize that this war is not just over there. Iranians have a big community up near Vancouver in Canada. We were up there last year. They have communities all over the United States. They have a big community in Panama. There's a big Arab community in Panama. There's big in Venezuela as well. You've got Iranians. You've got people and even people from Lebanon who speak Spanish fluently, natively, because these communities, you might not realize it, but a lot of these anthropological wonders, when you really go to a place like Panama and you start to realize, hey, there's a lot of people here living in Panama who are actually from the Middle East, but they grew up in Panama. But they might go back and forth to the Middle East, right? Like there's a huge Jewish community in Panama, but it seems to be broken into three major components, at least three major components. You got similar with Arabs and Lebanese. You got similar with Iranians, right? So what I'm getting to is when you look in our own backyard, it's not like the war is over there. It's in Florida. It's in New York. It's in Los Angeles. It's in Bahamas. China has a huge port right off the coast of Florida in the Bahamas. We went over there about a year and a half ago. It's like, it's a huge port right there off our coast. We have people wash up on our beaches constantly that come in from the Bahamas, that come in from Cuba and other places. China has had relations with Cuba since at least the 1800s. I found in Panama City, Panama, an old document from the Qing dynasty in Cuba in Spanish, and it's from the Qing dynasty consulate or embassy there in Cuba, and it's actually verifying that this guy is actually Chinese. It was a Cuban guy named or Chinese guy named Jose Fook or something like that, right? And so he was, and they're saying, yeah, this guy's actually Chinese, right? Because the Cuban embassy wanted, or the Cuban government wanted to know. What I'm getting to is these relationships are not suddenly new. They're like baked in the cake, right? They're solid. They're like people who go to school back and forth between Cuba and China and Venezuela and China and Venezuela and Russia and China and Russia. And this is all, these relationships are very solid, right? So it's not like, whereas most Americans, we seem to hop around, they're more methodical and very slow about it, right? So the idea that this war is going to stay over there, no chance. No chance whatsoever. It'll be within our borders, and it will be in Central and South America as well. You see down in Argentina, where I spent a couple of months last year, the Chinese and the Zionists are having some competition down there. The Chinese are building the bioceanic corridor. They've got the port there in Buenos Aires, just like they have the port, two ports in Panama. The port many ports in South America and in Asia and in the United States, running ports in the United States. I mean, we talk about the Chinese running the ports in the Panama Canal. They're running ports in the United States, right? Straight up. So, I mean, again, these things that when people like me are saying, what are we doing over there? We need to clean up our house. I mean, really clean it up. I was over in front of the Panama Canal, I don't know, a month and a half ago, and there was a power outage in, where was it, Spain? Where was that power outage? And I was there, and an American general messaged me about the power outage, right? And I'm like, that's interesting because there's a ship going under the bridge right now, the Thatcher Ferry Bridge, and it had windmill blades on it. And I'm like, where could this be going to? Because it's coming in from the Pacific. It must be coming from China to Texas. And I look at the ship name. I look it up on a maritime tracker. Yeah, it's carrying windmill blades from China to Texas. Literally. I'm like, remember the power outage here, of course, and windmills, and literally there's this power outage in Spain, and I'm watching windmills. It's like a movie set. Because whenever you see the name on a ship, you can just look it up and see where it came from and where it's going to. So I took photos of it and I put it online, right? So we're totally captured by China at this point. Where many of the goods that are vital to our existence are coming from China. We can't make ships quickly for our Navy. They have a bigger Navy than we have now. Now, people often wave their mental magic wands and go, yeah, but our ships are better, without any evidence of that whatsoever. And remember, numbers are a weapon system in and of itself, right? The fact that they may have 2 or 5 ships over there and we have 0, well, they win, right? They can make ships far faster than we can make them, right? Like numbers of airplanes. If you can make airplanes really, really fast and you have a lot of airplanes, like we did in World War II, you can win. Germans can have the best airplanes in the world, and we're showing up with 10, and you're showing up with 1, I mean, this is the way it's going with China. Anyway, did you have something else? I'm running off.
No, well, I mean, I know a lot of people now are under the conception that the Jews are behind a lot of pretty much everything that's going on, all the problems, and so
not all, but
but so basically what you're saying is that
Zionists.
It's the Zionists that are behind this problem, and many of the Zionists are actually your everyday professing Orthodox Christians.
Yeah, but most of those I think are more support based. They don't even know what's going on, but it's Chinese too. Like it's not just Zionists. I mean, it's a jungle of oligarchical systems, right? It's a jungle of architectural structures. And a lot of the Zionist Christians, of course, they provide a huge money base and support base, political support base. You saw Tucker Carlson talking with Ted Cruz on that interview that suddenly everybody's talking about. And Ted Cruz, wants to go to war full blast with Iran, as do many people. And they're all doing the normal mockingbird, right? The mockingbird, everybody says the same thing. And Tucker Carlson asked Ted Cruz, what is the population, Senator Cruz, of Iran? And he didn't know. He didn't know anything about Iran. He's like I doubt that he knew what countries Iran borders, actually. I mean, I'm doubting. I don't know. Maybe he does, but
Our lawmakers are who are wanting to basically eradicate Iran. That's crazy. They don't even know the first thing about the country they want to destroy.
No. And this is normal. I saw this when I was in the Iraq wars and the Afghan wars, and people would tell me this and that and the other. Well, we're over there for women's rights. And I'm like, I'm sorry. I've been all over the United States. We got some women's rights issues here. You know what I mean? You go up to places and they got road signs up, don't beat your wife type stuff, you know? And so we're going to run off. It's just like child level thinking, like frog on a lily pad level thinking. So we're going to go over there and spend $1 trillion, get a lot of people on both sides killed or many sides killed, not accomplish anything when it's all said and done, zero, except for arming them. Now we've got the Taliban, they've got significant combat training on how we actually fight with our actual gear, right? And they were already great fighters. And you know, you got to keep in mind, combat for Taliban, for let's say Pashtun people, again, that's like soccer to them. I mean, I found this old book from the 1800s. Which one was it? Was it The Bear Went Over the Mountain or The Eagle Went Over the Mountain? There's more than one book. One of them is called The Bear Went Over the Mountain. But I read several of them, and one of them from the 1800s. This British officer that after this war that they had with the Pashtun people, which most of the Taliban are Pashtun, they were having like an award ceremony, and the Pashtuns are like, you know, because some of the enemy were at the ceremony, and they're like, "Where's our awards?" And he's like, "You're not going to get any awards." And they're like, he's like, "You know, you were the enemy." They're like, "Yeah, but you wouldn't have had a good fight if it weren't for us." You know, for them, it's part sport. I mean, like literally. During the Afghan war that I was in a battle that I was not in, I've heard this story, though. It happened with a special forces team. When you go, the way that the Afghan mountains are, there's generally like 2 entrances and exits to the valleys, right? Just the way their mountains are in certain areas. So once you go in, they know you're going to come out one of 2 ways, right? Unless you go out by helicopter because you're dead, you know. But you're gonna come out one of 2 ways, right? So they go in this one way. They're doing some mission. This Green Beret team, they get into this huge firefight. Maybe one of those Green Berets will watch this and correct anything that's wrong and fill it out. But so they go in there. They get into this huge firefight that goes on for about a day or more than a day. And then it's all over. And all these, you know, they were watching a lot from the drones and the aircraft, airstrikes going on. So they finally get out. And then they go back later to some village that had, you know, they had been working with in the past. And they're like, "Why did you fight us? You know, we're supposed to be friends." And, you know, they said something like, "Yeah, but nothing ever happens here in this valley. So nobody's going to miss a good fight." I mean, what I'm getting to is they fight because it's kind of like, it truly is like a sport. It is really on that level, and they're good at it. They're very good at it. They're very brave. And keep in mind, there's this other weapon system called stupidity, right? And another weapon system, in other words, that can lead to what appears to be audacity. But it's really, you didn't know that they're going to, you know, that we can really catch you if you do something or get you. But they just do it because they don't know any better, and it works, right? They don't realize that you can't get into an American base that easily, but then they do it, right? They got into a suicide bomber, got into one of our mess halls with a unit that I was with. I wasn't with them yet, but that was with the Deuce 4. I was with them later. In fact, the commander of CENTCOM now, Eric Carilla, his unit, this was in Mosul. So they got this would be in 2004, so you can find it in the news. What I'm telling you now, you can easily find in the news. So a suicide bomber somehow got into the mess hall that I used to later eat in after they rebuilt it. And he went in there with a suicide bomb, cacked it off, killed like 20 people, American soldiers, right? So you can find that online. That's audacity. That's just the willingness to go, "Yeah, I know I can't get on an American base, but here, watch this." And he did it, right? And so things like this happen all the time just by a matter of just going for it, like the Taliban that wiped out a bunch of several of our Harrier jets on the ground in Helmand Province in Afghanistan. I wrote a dispatch called "When the Moon Sets, Watch Out." So if you remember that, if you look up when the moon sets, watch out. You can understand how they got into our base, destroyed these Harrier jets on the ground, killed the commander, actually killed the Marine commander of that Harrier jet unit. And the jets never got off the ground. They just did what was impossible, and it worked. And so I wrote a long dispatch about how they did it. These are very smart people. They might think, well, they don't have all the stuff that we have. These people are smart. This is all the dumb ones are dead, right? They might not be able to read, but they know how to fight. They know how to watch your habits. They know how to watch. Hey, every day he comes out and walks the dog. Every day they do this. Every day when the sun goes this way, he goes that way. Whatever, right? They use old tactics too. They are always watching the moon, just like the Comanches used to do. Right where we're at right now. Comanches. There's a good book about Comanche fighting called what's it called? Anyway, I read it. The Comanches fight very similar to the Taliban. They use the moon a lot. That's why I called that dispatch, when the moon sets, watch out. That's why you'll often see me checking the moon phase. If I'm in a war, I know the moon phase. If you ask me if I'm in a war and you ask me about the moon, I'll say tonight it should be like 40% illumination or something, right? When's the new moon? 13th or whatever. It's interesting. I published before some months ago when I was in Panama that if the United States were going to do an attack, I thought they might do it on like a military attack. It might be like I don't know, April 12th or 13th or something like that, or March 12th or March. It's right around there because I was just memorizing the moon phases, right? And interestingly, I was at a hotel in Panama. This is just months ago. And, and if we attack, we're probably going to turn out all the lights and that sort of thing, which is what we did. We're going to kill your phones and all that sort of stuff. They might leave the phones on, actually, to track comms, or they might turn them off, right? But they're going to turn the lights out, right? And so that's what we did for the first invasion. I wasn't there, but, the invasion of Panama. And so I'm there a few months ago, and this is because of the moon phase. This is when I had written a couple months before that. If we do something, it'll probably be around this night, or this night. Those were all full moon or bookmarking full moons. So I'm looking at the moon. I'm going, well, if we're going to do it, this would be the night. And boom, the lights went out. I'm like, wow. So, you're always surprised even when you predicted it. And I'm like, well, I don't hear any helicopters. I don't see any jets. I don't hear any drones or nothing, no flashes of light in the distance. And the Panamanians were going, they were immediately all jumped out to go to the gas stations and they because their communications was still going. So the comms weren't out. So that was an indicator. It was just some kind of power thing. And they were a lot of the Panamanians were like leaving town because a lot of the Panamanians still keep go bags, right? Because they know what happened the last time we invaded. And as it turns out, weirdly, you can find this in the news, a power plant had some kind of explosion, and it turned out a huge amount of the electricity all the way across Panama. So, with me, I'm like, well, this is the night I actually predicted one of the nights it might happen, and the lights went out, but it was nothing. I don't know if it was a test. I don't know if it was a warning. I don't know if it was just a rat got in the transformer. I don't know what happened, but the lights went out. So, but what I'm getting to is paying attention to the moon is important. One of the months that wars have a habit of starting, wars are apt to start at any time or really kick up. But one of the big months for that is August. August, like a full moon on August. I'm always paying it. One time I was in California. This was 2003, I guess. And I think it was like March 23rd, if my memory's right. And I get outside, I'm like, the moon is straight overhead. It's a full moon. I said, you know what? I bet we're about to attack Iraq, or we're doing it right now. And it turned out that was right. We attacked on the full moon, right? So sometimes you'll do it on no moon. That's why when I go out with hunters and all these different villages around the world, I find the hunters and I ask them, what moon do you like to hunt on? Or do you like to hunt at night? They all like to hunt at night. But, then what do you pay attention to the moon? They all do. Like in Panama, the Indians in Panama all like to hunt on no moon. So zero moon, like new moon, right? So they ambush hunt on a new moon. That's important to know because then you know when you're likely to get in combat with them, right? Because they'll tend to fight men similarly to the way that they will fight, that they'll hunt animals. The moon is very important in war.
Yeah, that's really good. And as we're talking about the hard truth through all these situations, I was talking to you a little bit earlier, and you said when you first point out the truth of what's happening now or what may happen in the future, that a lot of people in governments are going to go at you, call you wrong. And I just want your advice on how to be a truth teller in a world that rewards silence and punishes integrity.
Yeah, I mean, you got to get used to getting punched. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like financially, it cost me greatly to, because people like, I say something bad about Trump, okay, I'll never support you again. And you see them, they cancel subscriptions and that sort of thing. And, I'm just used to it. I'm like one of those welders that gets little things on him all the time, or the electrician that gets shocked all the time. Eventually, you're like, yeah, it was 220. It's okay. Next. So, but the thing is truth is an investment, and lies are an expense, and in the end, look at my record. The hits to miss are very, very much in my favor, very much, with a few misses scattered in between, mostly hitting them out of the park. And that's mostly because, well, you've seen, I've worked with y'all for some days now. You see how I work, morning until late at night, every single day for years, decades, right? What you're seeing now is not an anomaly. I'm either off in a war doing this, or I used to be before I put on this bear weight, not beer weight because I don't drink, but bear weight, but cheese weight. And but I spent years in wars and that sort of thing. And but in the wars I was the same way. I would come in from one mission, get right on with the next unit, go out with them, right? If I wasn't too tired. Sometimes you're just like falling dead asleep, But other times, I would just one unit after another going into missions, and I learned a huge amount. So over a period of years, it really adds up to the point where you, as we talked about recently, if you start to practice your ability to predict and just do it quietly, privately, don't tell anybody so you don't get embarrassed at the mistakes that you inevitably will obviously make. You just make a little notebook and start predicting things. The best things to try to predict are things that you actually know about, right? That you feel confident in your knowledge. And at some point you're going to realize, hey, I may have been confident in knowledge that I really don't possess to the level that's any worthwhile on prediction. Or maybe my information is accurate, but my paradigm and basically the algorithm I plug it into is not right. Like all the inputs were right, but the computer itself the algorithm's wrong, right? So, but once you get to the point where you feel confident in one field, start trying. I'm not talking about rolling dice. That's not something like that. But like, will my teacher do X? I've been with this teacher for a year, and will they do X? And you start, I don't know. Just make up your own predictions and write them down and assign a percentage to it, and then start grading yourself on how well the ones you get right and wrong, and start analyzing. Why do I think I got that right or wrong? And then, so those are the organic predictions, predicting about things that you actually know enough about that it's an organic prediction, right? And then there's the sort of inorganic predictions, which are the ones where people ask you to predict something. And you're like, that's kind of out of my field. You know what I mean? I'm not comfortable. It might be close enough that I might give it a stab, but with the huge caveat that I don't know enough about this. I'm just going to take a stab at it, but write those down, right? I don't do too many of the in a public eye, the stabs, you know what I mean? I'll do that privately to try to improve my skills, but publicly, when I'm making any predictions, it's going to be, and a lot of times I'm not making a prediction like the moon and the attacks. I wasn't saying I expect an attack. I was very careful to word things but I'm watching these full moons. You know what I mean? I'm going to be ready on these full moons, and the bookmarks around those full moons. But that's just because that's a lifetime of knowledge that people have been doing for millennia as using the moons in battle. But yeah, if you try that on your predictions, I think, and people watching this, if they start to make your own little diary of predictions, you're going to see you're going to get better really quick. You're going to get, at first you're going to be all over the board, and then you're going to tighten your shot group to the point where you're starting to feel confident.
Well, what you just said, that you're always working from sunup to sundown, decades on end, and always looking for work. And I think that's how us men are designed to operate. We're always supposed to be looking for work, working. We're not meant to be just sitting around on the couch, scrolling on the social media. And I'm a victim of that, but I try to catch myself whenever I can, and I'm starting to get better at it, where I catch myself scrolling or being lazy. I'm like, no, I need to find something that will fill my time with value, because your time is very, very valuable. It's more precious than money, more precious than anything on this earth is your time. And if you waste it away by doing aimless things, scrolling on Instagram, or even drinking or getting doped up and everything, that really steals your time. And your time is the most valuable asset you have.
Yeah, and on the intoxicants, it steals your time and also just dumbs you down. It literally dumbs people down. And, and the reason we have to work on those around us, because there's a lot of great people that have somehow fallen for the chemicals, right? And now they're dumbed down and they're not reliable anymore, right? But they could be. They just got to get that crap out of them, right? And because although the Rambo movies are fun to watch, in real life, there ain't no Rambo. We are part of a structure, and we have to be reliable. When I'm doing my job is to bring back information. And at this point, in the earlier days, I would just bring back and say, here's what I saw, right? But as the years went on, I got to the point where I'm like, actually, I should give my opinions on these things, because I know what I've been thinking and how accurate it's turning out. So I'm confident enough, I'm just going to start saying it out loud, right? And so when you get that confident, after you're starting to realize that you're very confident, you're much more confident than the expert, you're more accurate than the experts, it becomes very valuable. But so my job is to bring back information and opinions that are accurate, right? But what I'm getting to is as men, we all have to do our parts. My part is information. Other people's part will be something else. Other people's part might be, keeping the plumbing working, like literally like citywide plumbing, or plumbing of the neighbors, or all of these are absolutely vital components, right? And so we all have to do, I love the way the Japanese think about this stuff. Whatever your job is, be good at it. Whatever it is. And if you're a really great kitchen worker, you'll get huge respect for that, just like you would get respect by being an athlete. You know what I mean?
Well, the Bible says that too.
Does it?
Bible says whatever you do it wholeheartedly, like you're serving the Lord, because you are.
That's it. Just be the best you can be. And that's one of the things I love about Japan. They live by that same idea. Like, if you're good at mowing lawns and you're the best there is, you're going to get respect just like you or some major league dude. It's like, it's just a matter of bringing whatever you do to a high level and being reliable. You know what the big insult in Japan is to say that you're lazy. Wow. That's the gravest insult you can throw on somebody, is that you're lazy.
Yeah, and I hear this a lot this day and age, of like people who are like, I can't make enough money, like I can't get this done, like I just can't get enough to like support myself. But there are thousands of opportunities every day, especially in this day and age, that if you really work hard and commit to it, like you are going to make the money you need. And like there's no excuses for being lazy and falling into that. And a lot of issues that I've had with that, my work is people just, they get there and they do enough, and just doing enough is not enough. Like
Doc says.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I love it when
exactly.
he says it. The way he puts it. Yeah.
Well, I think that doesn't just apply.
We're talking about Doc Chambers.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Doc Chambers.
Yeah.
I think that also not only applies just to money, but the time you spend with your family and everyone else. Because people say they don't have time, but you have time. Obviously, if you waste your time away, then you don't have time. But there's enough time in the day for you to allocate for work and your family, and you need to be careful to have set boundaries for each of those things. Otherwise, you'll get wrapped up in work or being lazy, and you'll leave, your family on the side. Or if you're spending too much time on TV, you'll leave potential income on the side. And so you need to have those, I believe you need to have those strict boundaries in place.
Right. Yeah. You're quiet the whole time.
We were talking the other day about a slippery slope and how these drugs and alcohol can take you down the wrong path very quickly. So.
Yep. You know what? Slippery slope. It's good that you brought up two separate topics that are related. Slippery slope and logic. You'll often hear people say the slippery slope fallacy in logic, right? That it's a fallacy. It's not actually a logical way to think, that there is a slippery slope, because what they're trying to do, that's usually used in relation to something like drugs, actually. Like you say, no, we shouldn't do that because then you'll end up with this, that, and the other, and slippery slope can be a fallacy at times. But in real life, there are slippery slopes, period. As a matter of just common day-to-day living, we see that. Somebody decides to, they start off with something, and the next thing you know, they're living on the street. The slippery slope is quite real. And not only that, it's when they start hanging out, the people that you spend your time with, you're like, what's that saying? You're the average or sum. What does that go?
You're the average of your friends.
Yep.
That means I'm getting a pretty high average because I'm always the lowest on, you know what I'm saying? I'm always trying to hang out with people that are smarter than me and everything more than me. Like when I was on my A teams, when I was in the Army, I was on 2 Special Forces teams. I was the youngest guy on both teams. It was great for me. I was probably their anchor, but you know what I mean? I wasn't the wind in their sails, let's put it that way, because I didn't have the experience that they had. But yeah, and so when the people that are drinking all the time and whatnot and doing the drugs, they're going to hang around with that group. So the first thing you have to do is just break away from them. Just straight up. And it's the old formula everybody knows. First, just remove yourself from that environment. It's like if you're listening to this, again, my dog got drunk and stole my truck and went hunting with the neighbor or something, you know what I mean? It's like it's all about drinking and doing drugs and acting like idiots. If you don't want to be part of that, and you should not want to be part of that, then you have to leave the people that are doing that. And if you can, drag a couple of them out of there with you and bring them off to the clean side where it's good, where life is good. They think life is good being a drunk idiot. It's not. They lose a lot of opportunities. There's people that I would have given them a little hint here or there about something could have really changed a lot of things that they're doing, but I see them like they come in smelling like dope one day, and I'm like, that's it. They don't realize a door just slammed that they didn't even know was there, right? It's very important to just treat that stuff like it's the pox.
Yeah, I think what you said about music is also very important. Music has, I wouldn't say as much of an impact as psychotropics, but it has a massive impact on your mood and whatnot. It can get you depressed very quickly. It can build you up very quickly, and so you need to be very careful about what you're putting in your mind. The same goes for TV shows and all that stuff.
You're just drinking it through your ears. Why would you drink sadness through your ears? You know how many people have asked me over the years about how are you not getting depressed despite this, that, or the other? And some people that, you can tell they're like depressed today. And I've mentioned to y'all before, next time one of your friends does this, which it will happen, just ask them to look at their playlist. And you'll be like, the reason I would be depressed if I listened to that. Right. You know what I mean? You could depress a Wolverine listening to that stuff. You know what I mean? Just get rid of it. And it's not hard. You might be addicted to listening to, I don't know, something, ABBA or something. Oh no, you said bad about ABBA. It's all sad music and stuff. Just get rid of it. listen to stuff that lifts you up, that makes you stronger, makes you. If it's anything that's like how great it is to go get drunk and all that crap, that's not good. Just get rid of that crap. Remember, and when I was growing up in the '80s, there were songs like "Cocaine." Bob Seger, is that who it was? Who was singing it? Cocaine? It was a very famous song. You know, it was just all these songs that were totally. Now, I remember when I was younger, the old people would talk about this stuff, and I always thought it was crazy, right? And they're like, you know, like my grandmother, she said, one day your children will be buying bottled water out of the store. And I'm like, she used to say that all the time. Or not all the time. She said it enough that it stuck with me. And I'm like, nobody's ever going to buy a bottle, because they started selling bottled water in the store, and we were all making fun of it. We're like, what kind of idiot would buy bottled water out of the store? You know, and my grandmother, and I said, nobody's ever going to do that. And she's like, Michael, I know you love to read all those books, and you should keep right on doing it, but your grandmother's been on this earth a long time, and I'm telling you, you'll be buying bottled water out of the stores. Do you understand? Every time I pick up a bottle of water, every time I think of my grandmother. That's like every day. Often, I mean, like, I'm thinking about all these crazy stuff she told me that all came out to be true. Granny Alex Jones. And she just has been around. She wasn't well educated, but she was super smart, you know. And oh my gosh, I can't believe it's all come true.
Could you give a step-by-step process as to how you would advise, like, one of the listeners who might have friends that are doing these drugs and alcohol to get off of it?
One is, as I mentioned over lunch, I have a friend who actually just quit drinking and smoking marijuana, actually. And part of that was because when he would bring up excuses, I'd be like, I don't want to hear about it. You're a man. I don't want to hear about it. We've all got a whole bunch of excuses, you know what I mean? We could all think in our lifetimes of, you know, then the time my kitten died or something, you know what I mean? Or my friend got shot in the face in the war or whatever. You know, there's a lot of stuff, right? I could think of 1,000 reasons why I should be depressed. I'm not going to allow my way to be that way because I'm a man and I have responsibilities that go outside of my own little tiny feelings. You know what I mean? I need to harness my feelings, not let them harness me, right? Man up. Just put it in those very clear terms. I don't want to be your psychologist. I don't want you crying on my shoulder. It's time for you to man up, right? Like, you know, Major Payne said. Did you see the movie Major Payne? What did he say about sympathy?
Man, I need to put that on my watch list. I haven't seen it.
This might not be a nice thing to say. You know what I'm talking about? You want sympathy? Look in the dictionary and you'll find it between shit and syphilis. Oh. And I'm like, that's Marine talk, brother. I was in the Army, but I love Marine talk. You know what I mean? It's like
straight in your face.
He's just like, boom, no that's nonsense. The way it is.
No
you
nonsense.
Want sympathy? You're like, yeah. And so when the men are around you, expect you to be a man, and you expect them to be a man. It feeds on itself. You know what I mean? It feeds on itself, and then as a group, you become stronger. And 1 + 1 doesn't equal 2. 1 + 1 = 3 or 4. You know, like an A team, where all the men on the A team are men, and they're all expecting each other to be men and highly competent and loyal, right? It just feeds on itself, right? And you become much more powerful than 12 men, right? And so anybody that's in the military, you don't have to be in any special operations forces or police forces. If it's a serious police force, fire department, anything where you're firefighters jumping in with the parachutes or whatever, you rely on everybody to be studs, right? You don't have time for, I forgot my shovel. You know what I mean? We don't have time for that, right? And so when it comes to what are you going to do? The fire alarm comes and the city's burning. I'm sorry, I was getting high. Oh no. Yep. Unacceptable. You're out, right? And the special operations forces, one negligent discharge with your rifle, out, right? That's it. No excuses. No accidental discharges. It's not an accident. It was negligent, right? You popped it off. Maybe killed your friend. Maybe didn't. Whatever. You're still out. And so once you bring it to that level, everybody comes to that level. And then it radiates back out to their families, right? their families become stronger too, right? And that's what we need. We have to have strong communities of reliable men. And, you know, by the way, that attracts women, by the way. They don't want some girlfriend. They might say they want a girlfriend, but they don't want a girlfriend. Biologically, they want a man, right? They want a man that is somewhat dangerous. And if you're not somewhat dangerous, you're really not a man. You know what I mean? Seriously. And I mean that in full seriousness. I mean, you have to have a dangerous component to yourself, right? Because at the end of the day, we may have to defend our friends and each other. We may have to defend each other in minutes from now. In 1 minute, somebody could burst through the door and come after us, and we got to go to work, right? So I mean, and so it's down to us to actually take action and wolf pack them. You know what I mean? So I mean, that's the way we have to be. We have to be. And a lot of these like Pashtun people, they're going to wolf pack you. You know what I mean? They're men who expect each other to be men. That's what I say. You know, when I'm watching these people coming across the borders. And I've spent most of my life downrange in these other countries, like in Afghanistan or wherever. And, you know, and I'm watching these guys watch the dopehead Joe Rogan lay around on the couch and do their dope stuff, drinking, getting drunk, thinking it's cool. Oh, he's an MMA guy. I'm like, tell you what, you might be the toughest MMA guy in the world. You get 3 or 4 of those Taliban coming through your window. Guess what, MMA? You're high, and they're going to chop you to pieces. You know what I mean? It doesn't mean crap, right? And if you're not alert and you don't have, your neighbors aren't strong, you're not strong, you're not going to be able to resist these type of men. These type of men, they fight. That's what they do. They know how to fight. They know how to spy. They know how to hide. They know how to sneak up, right? And they know how to go to work when it's times to go to work. They're not, the bullets flying, they'll come right at you. You think they're going to run away from your gunfire? You better be able to hit them, right? I mean, this is this is game on, because they're not playing around. These guys are studs, and you got to be ready for that, and you can be, right? But you can't be like that when you're doped up. You just can't be.
Yeah, like you said earlier, courage is contagious, and so is cowardice. So stand courageous.
It is, and so there's no time for tears. There's no time. I'm telling you, you guys are young and unmarried. When women see that you're strong and you're confident, not based on arrogance, but based on things that you do, like the sports that you do and the other things that you're learning and the knowledge that you're gaining and your ability to solve problems constantly, because you're always going to get hit with thousands of problems, the rest of your life. You're never like, I solved the last problem. No, you're going to have problems until the end of the time, right? Till you run across the finish line and go to God. But that's fine, because that's what we're here to do, right? And when they see that you don't, oh boy, I got a problem, I better go home and cry about it. You know what I mean? No. Yeah, I might go home and think about it before I do something, because you want to think things through sometimes before you make a move. But our job is to solve problems, to defend our families in many different ways. And that's what we're going to do.
That's exactly right. Well, Michael, that's just incredible information. I hope everyone listening really takes heed of what you're saying and applies it to their life, because if they do, it will change their life 100% for the better, and it will equip them to better be able to defend themselves, both physically, mentally, and spiritually. I hate to cut you off, but I think we're going to...
Then let's keep going.
Yeah. We will continue this again before you leave and go back over to Japan.
Maybe we can get Doc Chambers.
That's true, yeah. That would be awesome. We'll get Doc. But thank you, Michael. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you.